Ultimately, you'll get more with a kind word than you will shaking a fist.
Welcome to Bigger Than the Hustle podcast, where I bring you real conversation with entrepreneurs on how they live their lives outside their business. We deep dive into the energies, the motivations, the habits, the disciplines, and the mindset which make them successful in their life, which in turn allows them to be successful in their business. Now, today, I've got Chris Addis with me. Now, he's got a really interesting backstory for those of you who are looking to start a business that believe that there's no real options for you. He'll show you that there are options, and just perseverance will keep you going. So without further ado, hi, Chris.
How do? You all right?
Yeah, not bad. You well?
Yeah, getting there, definitely.
Good. So if you could just give a little bit of a bio into you right now, and then we'll deep dive into the conversation.
Sure. So obviously, credit crunch went by. We've had a fair bit of sort of, hardship to come up against. Me and my wife, we lost our home. I lost my job. I got made redundant twice in 1 year. I didn't have much of an educational background to fall on, and so I just had to basically just grind it out and try and find options, basically. So
And from there, you've obviously set up your own business now, which you're running. So if you could just talk a little bit about that right now.
Yeah, sure. So I run a company called Estuary Cleaning. We are commercial and residential window cleaning contractors on the Fylde Coast. So that's like Blackpool, Lytham to Preston. So our residential round is mainly around the Fylde Coast, but we do travel further afield for the right commercial contracts and stuff. So it's interesting. Now,
before obviously we're starting, you gave me a little bit of a backstory, and I think it's a hugely interesting backstory. So I'd like you to go into a little bit of that, because it shows that no matter what cards life deals you, there's always light at the end of the tunnel, right? During the storm and the clouds, the rain does stop at some point and the sun does start shining. It's just having the ability to see past that and move on. And I think your story would be hugely inspiring for a lot of young people, even a lot of people just going through a lot of hardship right now, with the pandemic we're in, and there's a lot of stressful situations. So if you can sort of run through that with the listeners, so we can then go further from there.
Sure. So my background in terms of, if you like, not from a particularly rich family, grew up in Greater Manchester in Bolton, the most affluent area of the north of England, to be honest with you. It was like more or less a council estate that I grew up on. And my expectations from my mum and dad were ultimately, school doesn't really matter. You go out, finish school, get a job, bust. And the sorts of jobs that were being done by my mum was in the NHS, so she was a nurse. She was in the Navy as a nurse. Then she became a nurse in the NHS. Then she became a medical secretary. My dad was also in the Navy as a medical technician. Used to work on submarines, and they came out of the Navy. They went into the NHS, government job, and were of the mindset of, you have to climb the greasy pole, get a job, become indispensable, climb the greasy pole, work hard, and your efforts will be rewarded, and all that sort of jazz. And it was just not the case, to be honest with you. It was a rude awakening, I can tell you. So, I mean, my academic wise, I was, my teachers at my parents' evening used to come out and say, and at one point I actually remember being sat there when they said it, was that if we weren't legally obliged to teach Chris, we wouldn't. So I challenged authority everywhere I went. I was, a bit challenging to deal with. So I was, to a larger extent, I was just left alone at school from the teachers. They just didn't really tend to bother too much with me. A lot of that is my fault, I have to be honest with you. I took pleasure a lot of time in torturing my teachers. I was like, Dennis the Menace type character, so, but yeah, I paid for it in the end when I left school. I got an apprenticeship God only knows how, at a local bakery. So I started there when I was 16, and my mum and dad were so desperate for me to get this apprenticeship that we were actually on holiday in Fishguard in Wales, and I got the job offer on the Friday. We weren't due to come back until the following Wednesday, and my mum was so worried that I wouldn't get another job. We actually cut our holiday short to drive me back and start this job. So that's the kind of mindset, the desperation, the grasping, the trying to sort of hustle, if you like, and try and get in, get work and stuff. So I did that into my mid-20s. I enjoyed it. It was all right, but I wanted a bit more. So I moved out of the family home when I was 16. Me and my dad didn't get on. There's no issue over, I'm not waving the lantern or anything. There was no issues over abuse or anything like that. It was just, we just didn't get on. And I wanted out of the house. I shared a bedroom with my brother. It was only a 2-bedroom house. So it was quite a suffocating environment. So in the end, I just went, I'll sod this, I'm off. And I moved out when I was 16 to Wigan, in with a shared house and, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and then I just worked pretty much all the way through. I wanted more out of life. So I thought about becoming a police officer. In the meantime, on the side, I like the idea of earning a bit of extra money on the side. And I think, that's why I joined the Army Reserve, because I get to go away. They're going to give me a driver's license. They're going to pay me for the privilege and get to blow stuff up. So I was like, win. It's an absolute win. So, and I went into the Army Reserve. My initial nature of challenging authority was well and truly sort of knocked into shape and kicked into touch. And yeah, so the Army then taught me the value, so you work hard, you play hard and all that sort of stuff, but knowing your place within a structure and having discipline with routine, which traditionally I struggled with, but I saw the rewards. And there was a lot of people. A guy that recruited me was a guy called Duncan Fothergill, who's sadly he's no longer with us. But when he recruited me, he saw a lot of himself in me, kind of thing. When he looked at me, he was like, "I was like you. I know exactly where you're coming from." And he took a bit of a chance on me, because initially the Army didn't want me because I was a bit of a troublemaker. So yeah, they took me in and sort of showed me the error of my ways, if you like. And from there, I sort of had I got rewarded I worked hard, but I got rewarded, and I saw the reward in working hard and in working with others.
It looks like you had an entrepreneurial streak already in you at that point, because some of the things you said that sprung out quite quickly was you were still, even when things weren't going well, you were always thinking of other ways to earn money and trying.
Yeah, rather than looking at. Yeah. So rather than looking at, why something is happening to you, how you can use that situation to your advantage. So, as an example, I couldn't drive, but this unit that I wanted to join is what's called a reconnaissance unit. So the idea behind reconnaissance is you have to go. You're the guys at the front. They're a bit sort of separate themselves, if you like, from the rest of the combat arms. They effectively lead the way and show people where the target is and stuff like that. And I like that. But they said to me, really, you need to be able to drive. And I said, well, so there was an issue there. I couldn't drive, but they were prepared to teach me, but I had to sort of jump through certain hoops to get it. So I had to sort of suppress my ego to some extent and play their game. But then they rewarded me. So I got a driver's license, and they paid me to learn to drive. So I was like, well, this is crazy. I know guys that are paying hundreds of pounds to learn to drive, and the Army's not only doing it for free, but they're paying me for the privilege. I'm like, well, yeah, I'll buy that for $1. So it's what I could get out of a situation, as much as I had to put in, but I could reap rewards, no problem, but I had to put in, and so it went from there.
So when you started your business, you started as a 1 day a week, didn't you? You thought, let me try this, and then slowly it grew to what it is now. And that was, at a time when personally things weren't going so well, right? And life wasn't treating you the best of cards, but you just still had that mindset of just need to get up and just do things, right?
Just keep going. The thing is, so back in the UK, a couple of years, I went back again to Iraq with another unit, and I came back and sort of had to rejig again and sort of find another level. And at the time, I'd taken a year out of university because it wasn't really working out. The degree that I'd chosen, again, my own fault, my own mistake. It was very sort of narrow. It wasn't sort of wide ranging, something that could be applied in Civvy Street in the wider working world. It was a police and criminal investigation degree. It had elements of law, elements of police powers. It had forensics. It had criminology. It had sociology. And the idea was it was pigeonholing you towards being a police officer. What I wanted when I left the UK was completely different to what I wanted when I arrived back in the UK. And so I ultimately took the decision to drop out of university. I was very nervous about doing that because ultimately I'd put so much time, so much effort, so much stock, if you like, in trying to achieve that one goal. And now I was walking away from it. And it was quite tough to do because when I start something, ideally I want to see it through to the end. But I could see where that journey was going to take me. None of the police services around the entire country were taken on, and they put an indefinite hold on recruitment. So around about the time that I was due to graduate, the opportunities would be very slim, and there was a very small window for me to sort of rejig, find something else, if you like, because I knew what was coming. I knew that eventually there would be job losses, there would be sort of a massive sort of recession and stuff like that. And I wanted to basically try and insulate myself from that and go in for the police at a time where they weren't taking people on and they were using natural wastage and stuff like that. It wasn't really the way to go. So I ended up falling back on what I had before, which was a bakery qualification. I ended up working at Sainsbury's in the bakery. I didn't really... I enjoyed the work, but I felt a failure because I'd taken a step back. It was a step backwards on the Monopoly board, if you like, and I just couldn't. I was so cross with myself, but I had to make. There was very few in the way of choices, so I did that, and I ate it and remembered what that sort of felt like, and that was that. I then lost that job I was reduced. I was forced to move. I then had 5 part-time jobs when I moved to Blackpool. So yeah, I had to start. So I had the idea of starting a window cleaning round, and it was going to be 1 day a week, and it was a Saturday. I would work Monday to Friday, doing various part-time jobs, and then I got offered a contract with the Army Reserve to be a recruiter, which was a bit more security, but it was only a 2-year contract. So I thought, right, I'll take that. And as it just so happens, the guy that was running that contract, who was in charge of that sort of sphere of operations, if you like, was the officer who I pulled behind the vehicle when we got blown up. And I feel that, I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel that he felt that he owed me a favour, and he didn't, because at the end of the day, he'd do the same for me. I think he felt that he owed me a favour, and in any way he could help me, he would do. So as soon as I mentioned that I was starting a window cleaning business, and he was like, well, that's really good and all that sort of stuff, and he took an interest in it. And over time, I plucked up the courage to sort of say to him, said, boss, can I drop 1 day a week? You choose which day you don't need me, and I'll have that 1 day, and I'll get more window cleaning customers. And initially, he was a bit skeptical, but he was like, yeah, well, if that's what you want to do, mate, no dramas, that's fine. Then I got another day's worth of window cleaning, and then another, and then I dropped another day, and then he could see that it was getting traction, and he was really supportive. So that's how I got going, and I got in more days. And before I knew it, I was working 6 days a week doing window cleaning on my own, sort of 10-hour days. But I was all of a sudden reaping the rewards, if you like, of working hard. And then got my van, and then Because initially, when I started window cleaning, I didn't actually have a ladder. I was doing bungalows because I couldn't even afford the ladder. So I was like, so rather than looking at most, and I find that with a lot of young people now, and it's not, to some degree, it's not their fault. They don't look at what they can do. They see obstacles before they can see a way of overcoming them. So, for example, for me, I mean, I didn't have enough money for a ladder. So, all right, well, I haven't got a ladder. What can I do? Well, I can clean bungalows. I don't need a ladder for bungalows. Okay, I'll do bungalows. So I went to the estate around the corner from where I was living, and sure as eggs is eggs, loads of bungalows with dirty windows. Right, let's have a bit of that. Let's get around there, get talking to people, sort of build rapport with people. And I think people buy from people rather than they buy a service. They don't really buy a service. They buy from people who are passionate, people that they could see that I wanted it. You know what I mean? And it's, oh, Chris. Especially the stereotypical elderly person. Oh, he's a lovely young man, and all this sort of stuff. And they do nothing but talk to each other. So as soon as one customer takes you on, another one wants your services, and so I was like, right, great, I've got my bungalows, happy days, and I would literally save 30% of whatever I made from the window cleaning because I had a full time, effectively like a 4-day week at one point, paying the rent, paying the bills, putting food on my children's tables and stuff like that. Whatever money came in aside from that, I was like, right, okay, well, 70% for me, 30% for investment, 77% for me, 30%. And before I knew it, I got a ladder. So I started doing bigger houses, started charging more. And then I got busier. And then it was like, right, well, I'm going to need someone to help me. So then I got a guy to help me out, and he used to do the ladder work, and I used to do the lowers because, that was the privilege, you see.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's my business, mate. I'll do the groundwork. You do the hard work. I'll watch. You know what I mean? So, but I did that, and yeah, and then from there, my granddad, sadly, he died, and so from the credit crunch, me and my wife, we had quite a lot of debt. We borrowed money. I borrowed money, should I say, to do up a flat that we were moving into. We moved into a flat which was rented from my wife's uncle. Long story short, the idea was that we would do it up, and then when it was sold, we would take a percentage of that as profit. You know what I mean? So the entrepreneurial mindset of trying to sort of say, well, what can I do? I can do that. I can take, and it backfired, and I failed. I defaulted on the loan. I had IVAs. I had people chasing me for money I didn't have. I had phone calls, all left, right, and Chelsea. You need to make payments, blah blah blah. And and it was no matter what you try and do, there's always a hurdle. There's always another something else. There's always when they say there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Back then, my mindset was it's usually a guy with a torch giving you more work, giving you more problems. And I just kept plugging away, just ignored the letters to some extent. You can't take money off me I haven't got. So I just ignored it, and I had IVAs and all this sort of stuff, and my credit score was through the floor, so I couldn't borrow money, and it was hard. And then my granddad died, and he unbeknownst to me, he left me and my brother £48,500, which which, to be fair, helped pay off a lot of the debt. But once we paid off my debt and I paid off my wife's debt, we started on an even keel, and there was only about 12,000 left over. And when you've grown up all your life around money, around no money, and then when someone puts 12 grand on the table, and it's like, you can do what you want with that. And it took every fibre of my being not to go, we're going on holiday, we're doing this, we're just going to blow it.
Yeah.
And I knew that I didn't want to do that. I knew that I wanted to. It wouldn't do my granddad any justice. So I put the money together. I bought a van, cash, and then I bought loads of window cleaning gear, uniform, advertising, and I doubled down on what was working. I could see the wind.
And the thing is, Chris, I love that story because it just shows that, like you said, a lot of people, especially in the young generation, believe all the lights need to be green before you start, right? So you see a row of lights, and almost like you see one red light. Okay, I can't do this because of this. I can't do this because of this. So rather than, like you said, you didn't even have a ladder, and so what? Without ladder, you go to the bottom floor. What's the bottom floor? And I love, it's that thinking process that's built, I think, the entrepreneurship in this country. It's, even when I started my business, I had £500 in my pocket from working in London for 6 months and then coming back. So I don't want to work for anyone. I just want to set my own business up. And literally, I got a shop. And that shop, we kitted out with IKEA, and it was like a table and a chair and a TV. And I started doing Sky. So Sky, when it launched in the UK, I had Sky Digital. A lot of people wanted it. I went onto a road, which was an Asian road. And then 20 years ago, Chris, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, all that. The only way you had business was you have a shop or a phone. They're the two ways you ran a business, right? And so I got a shop, negotiated 3 months rent free without even knowing what negotiation was, right? Just talked to the landlord. I don't know what I was doing, to be fair. And then we sort of started, this was in 2000, opened the door, and the first guy came in 15 minutes and said, I'd like sign up for Sky and blah, blah, blah. And I said, brilliant. So I had a big master plan. I was going to dominate the world with this business. He left. And then I had an occurrence. I thought, to have Sky, you need to fit a dish. Who the hell's going to fit a dish? And that was a thing for us, because I'm not going up a ladder. I'm not designed to go up a ladder, right? That thought, like you said, the lights were never green because I didn't even know there were lights. At that point, it was like, oh shit, what am I going to do now? And this guy literally drove by in a van, and he came in and he goes, oh, have you just opened today? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, I'm a satellite installer and I fit dishes. And that's the story of my business journey. There was never really a big plan. Things just rolled, right? And like you said, one day turned into 2 days, then 4 days, into 5 days. And the thing I really liked about what you said, people buy from people. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. All my 20 years in business has been me being able to adapt like a chameleon to who I'm standing in front of, right? If they want me to be technical, I'll be technical. If they want me to be simple, I'll be simple. If they want me to be happy, I'll be happy. If they want, and it's mirroring that person, isn't it? It's like when you probably meet a customer, this guy may not want me to talk. That's fine. I won't talk. Or he wants me to be really friendly. I'll be really friendly, right? And it's that ability to just adapt to your circumstance, right? And from there, like I said, your chips were really low at that point, right? You were in a lot of debt. And I'm sure that was eating away a lot of your brain cells as well in terms of sort of keeping things at bay, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Me and my wife, we to this day, we still talk about it. I can't reconcile my life now with what was happening 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's only been 5 years. This is not a a 20-year journey. This has happened in the last 5 years, and it's just crazy. And at the minute, it's helped me so much in the sense that it's all about life's about perspectives, I think. And I look at my great grandma, her generation. Now, my great grandma grew up in Bolton. And she used to clean the cooperative bank. The cooperative bank used to have a set of concrete steps, and her job was to brush those steps by hand, scrubbing hand brush for 3 pence a day, right? And she would do that, and they would go home. My great grandma sold my great granddad's World War I medal to pay for food. You know what I mean? My granddad, as far as he got his first pair of shoes when he was 14 years old. That's barefoot poverty. There's a picture of my granddad. I'm a shame I can't show it. It's in my photo album. I should have really brought it really. And it's funny because he's really short and he was quite skinny at the time. And my grandma was in that same class. Being about 12 years old, they grew up together. And so what happens is he's in the middle, but he's the shortest. And I said to my granddad, I said, fancy putting you in the middle because you're the shortest and all this sort of stuff. So they can't see you. And he says, there's a very good reason why I was in the middle of that picture, it was because I didn't have a pair of shoes and I was hidden behind the teacher. I didn't have a pair. I was literally one of, there were 3 kids in that class that didn't have a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And he got, so when he was 14, his first pair of shoes was from a family friend came over. This was during the war. And he basically there was a family member brought home some Canadian friends who were in the Canadian Army. And they were on leave just before D-Day. And this Canadian soldier handed my granddad a pair of boots because the Canadians got 3 pairs of boots. And he was due to get another pair to replace a set of worn-out boots. He gave my granddad his first pair of shoes at 14. And there were 2 sizes too big. But those were his first pair of shoes, and that was in 1944. Now, I don't care how good you are at maths. When you talk about poverty in a modern context, people will look at, I can't afford Sky.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can't get an iPhone.
I haven't got the latest iPhone. And it's like, and the thing is, my granddad didn't get a pair of shoes until he was 14.
And I love those stories because, even my dad he was from India and my mom was from Africa. And he would say all the time, sometimes he'd go to school barefoot because they didn't have shoes. And he goes, our whole thing was just eating, making sure we were able to eat. Like his parents' job was to make sure we were able to eat, not buy this and buy that. It was just literally being able to sit down and have food. And he goes, how far we've progressed as human race and as a human society, that it's not that long ago. My dad is still here. He's 73. And, it's only 70 years ago. That's not even a huge amount of time, right? 60, 50 years ago.
It's a blink in the grand scheme of things. It's a blink in history. And the thing it gets me is because as far as we have sort of come a long way as a species, in some respects, we've taken a step back because people are so used to that instant gratification, getting likes on Facebook, Instagram life, and all this crap. And they're investing a lot of their time in things that don't benefit them in any way, shape, or form. But they feel that life is robbing them if they don't get these small things, these little tidbits. And then when you listen to things like my grandma and granddad, my granddad was, he was barefoot poor, and he got the opportunity when he was 16, because back then an education was something you paid for. Once you hit 14, you left school. Back then, an education was something that rich people had.
It was a privilege, right?
And now it's a privilege. To be fair, it's still a privilege in the grand scheme of things, because again, where you go to places like Iraq, and you've got kids walking around carrying AK-47s, and you've got kids like killing each other for food, and you just think the thing is that in the West we take these things for granted, and I think I might be being a bit unfair, to be fair, on some young people, but generally speaking, a lot of young people, I think, are not nearly as robust mentally. I think there is a lot to be said about the mental health crisis and all this sort of stuff, but I think a big part of that is because there's a perception that you don't have what the next person has, and that is somehow robbing you of your right.
The comparison, right?
And really, it's strange, because the thing is that you this is why I think where stories of your father when he comes to this country, they're truly inspirational, because they come here with nothing, and they start again.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, guess what? You know what? Worst case scenario, I'm going to fail, but I'm going to fail in a lovely country where I have a lot, even at my poorest in this country, I have far more than what I have back in my own. And so that's a mindset in itself. It's not, when you turn into youngsters,
It's interesting that because my dad said exactly that. So when he came over from Africa, so he was in India, then they moved to Africa, and then they came to the UK. So he came to the UK with his friend and his brother and two friends. And he goes, we moved around, got a few jobs and stuff like that. And he goes, in Africa, when they moved from India, he goes, the life was pretty good compared to India, right? So they'd already moved up. And his parents always said, you know, if it doesn't work out, come back to Africa, but just see what it is. And he goes, for 2 years in the UK, he goes, I hated it because we had a good life, but I knew the problem was in Africa, we weren't going to progress anywhere further than we were. We were at the limit of progression, right? Yeah, we were at the limit. So therefore, by being here, and he'd write letters home every week to his sisters, his dad and mom saying, you know, everything's really good here. We're enjoying it. We're building a foundation. But his true thing was he hated every moment for the first 2 or 3 years, but he knew he had to go through it because he knew on the other side it's going to be so much better than him just stopping and going back. And that for me is a great story of actually saying sometimes you just have to deal with the shit, right? Because just stick at it, just stick at something, even though your brain is saying, you know, let's just stop. But you know, the bigger picture is so much better than where you've come from, right? And that always gives me hope and inspiration that even when things are not what we feel is, you know, right or correct or good, it's that comfort zone, isn't it? I think being in the middle of the comfort zone for me is the worst place for me personally when things are comfortable, because I know my brain becomes lazy and I stop thinking. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had my back to the wall, always been fighting. You know, you're talking about debt. 8 years ago, I was 250 grand in debt and sinking, right? And that the last 8 to 10 years has just been a process of paying it off, working, slowing things down and putting into perspective what's really important in life, which is relationships, which are the people around me, which is minimalism, as in cutting down the stuff you don't need. Keep emptying your backpack. Keep your travel. You know, like I have 2 kids, I have a wife, and I know it's like last year my cousin came back from Dubai, and she didn't have a car, and she was living with her parents, and her parents needed the car. She needed to get a job and stuff. And I said to them, "I just have my car. I'll be fine. I've got legs. I can get a bus. I've got a bike. You know, I'm fine." And because my mind has always been, we'll always be all right, irrespective. I know we have too much goodness around us to ever feel that things are not going to be all right. And when you have a mindset of hard work, you know you're willing to do what it takes. And I knew I was always willing to work hard. I've got that from my parents. When we got a mortgage, they asked us, "Do you want to get the insurance? But you know, if you haven't got a job for 3 months, you can claim." And I said, "Mate, if I haven't got a job for a day, I'm going out and I'm scrubbing the streets or I'm stacking shelves. There ain't gonna be 3 months I'm sitting around at home waiting for you to pay me." You know what I mean? And that, you know, it's that entitlement mentality. I think that's what you were saying, wasn't it? The entitlement, like I deserve this, I should do this without doing things. And I think your input into that is exactly right. No one's entitled to anything in life. We deserve what we earn, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a big believer, so growing up politically, being from Bolton, I was very sort of left-leaning, socialist, the state must provide, I'm entitled, why is this happening to me kind of mentality, it's the rich's fault, all these entrepreneurs and all this sort of stuff, exploiting the workers, blah, blah, eat the rich and all that sort of stuff. I was like, oh, God, man, I look back at myself and I just think to myself, what were you thinking? There's a lot of guys I used to hang around with. One of them was, my best friend back in the day. He has not moved on from that mindset, and it's. I'm not saying I'm not a third to rub anyone's nose in it. I'm not. But it just goes to show. I mean, if you can sit back and you can wait and you can moan and you can complain. And the bottom line is that in years to come, you will still be in the exact same place you were 10 years ago. But if your best safety net, in my humble opinion, your best safety net is a never say die attitude. My granddad's favorite saying, and it was my granddad effectively raised me. I mentioned before, I didn't really get on with my dad. My granddad effectively raised me And he had a very famous saying, and I don't know if he coined it, and I don't know where he got it from, but it makes so much sense to me. And it's don't tell me the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon. And that's the truth. You cannot argue with a mindset like that, because my granddad, he went from being barefoot poor. He then, managed to wangle his way onto a course to be an engineer, and he wanted to join the army as a captain in the engineers, but he had asthma, so he was constantly confronted with no, and all this sort of stuff. He eventually ended up working for BNFL, and then he went to work for ICI as a draftsman, and he ended up heading up a department. He bought a house in the 1960s. My grandma went nuts. I heard this story and I love it. If life's about vision, right? So he had this vision, right? And it doesn't matter. You could show him any list of evidence you like, physical or otherwise. It doesn't matter. I have a vision. This is happening. And so he bought this house, and he took my grandma to this house on the side of a field, and he's like, "What do you think?" And my grandma's like, "Where's the house?" It was literally pegs on the ground. It hadn't even had the foundations done, and he bought it off plan. But he bought it in the days where, money was money. You know what I mean? Like if you earned like, if you earned £40,000 a year back in the 70s, you were virtually a millionaire. You know what I mean? And so he bought this house. He worked his ass off, and he bought this house, and he bought it off plan. Now that's something that happens all the time here, because we have CGI and we have computers, and you can show your client, this is what your house is going to look like, and we'll put this here and we'll do that. But back then there was none of that. There was no CGI. There was none of this sort of, this is what it's going to look like. He bought it off a plan, off a 3D drawing on a piece of paper. And if that's not faith, you know what I mean? And then by the time he dies, I mean, his estate when he died, unbeknownst to us, was around £400,000.
Wow!
And you come from barefoot. I mean, I look at what I've done for my window cleaning business, and I'm looking at franchising my business, and I'm coaching other people into how starting businesses and stuff like that. I've got a YouTube channel as well, to sort of window cleaning startup and stuff like that. So I'm trying to give back a little bit as well, because it's all well and good, succeeding. Myself, I feel like a millionaire. I mean, I live in a rented house. I've got a car on the drive. I've got 2 vans outside. I've got 2 guys. I've got 3 guys that do work for me on my behalf as part of my company. I'm free 3 days a week to do things like this. Talk to people like good self, mentor people, have meetings, give quotes. I live a truly blessed life, but I'm far from a millionaire.
Yeah.
And the thing is, my granddad, he went from being barefoot poor to by the end of his life having a £400,000 estate, and bettering the lives of the people that come after him within the family. My mum now lives mortgage free, and she's now coming into the business, the property business with me. So there's property, there's coaching, there's there's the window cleaning itself. Honestly, the possibilities are endless. And when people say, window cleaning is good, Chris, but when are you going to get a real job? And it's like, okay, that's a fair comment, the idea is to not have a job, and that's where I'm trying to move myself and move my family forward in an ideal world.
It's the idea of, rather than sort of framing it as a job, if we frame it as we're giving service, we're using our skills and our mindset to give service, whether that be service in like I said, cleaning windows, whether that be service going up a pole,
providing value.
Adding value to this thing we call community and the people around us, right? If we, and the analogy I always use is, if we can shine our light bright, then the people around us can shine their light bright for the people around them, right? So it ripples out, doesn't it? That this mindset ripples out.
Rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, and we all rise together, right? It's all about all of us rising together, right? And what I like, Chris, is that it's like the school of hard knocks, isn't it? You've done it down there, you've done it from ground up. and you've not read a business book and you've not, done a business degree or anything like that. You've just actually gone out and said, let me just give this a go and see what happens. Like you said, what's the worst that can happen? They'll say, no, I don't want my windows clean. And they'll say, And I think we build it up in our own head more than anything, don't we?
Yeah.
And I think one analogy, I was watching a program and someone said, in the end, it doesn't really matter because in the end, we're just going to die. And it is so true that, we can build everything up in our own head, right? But eventually, we're not here and life residue may go. But if we can't leave something that can help others and leave something behind, which can help 2 generations gone, that we're not here anymore, but our kids' or, your nephew's kids and whatever can say. And this is the reason I do this as well, Chris, is because I want to still continue my words when I'm not here anymore. I want my kids to look back and say, that was my dad. And it's almost like a message to them all the time to say, we have this technology now. I would love to have seen this of my great granddad,
Oh God. Oh, me too.
That I'll go into, it's like a little...
I feel that as a generation, I think that we, yours and my generation, I think to some extent we are creating something that can be passed down the line. I mean, there will always be multimedia from now till the day dot, and traditionally, it goes back to cavemen passing down experiences over the campfire and talking, and that was all passed word of mouth. But as soon as if that person dies before passing that message on, then that's what causes. There's like a blame, it's like a full stop. But if we can sort of come together and basically sort of, we can try and better ourselves, and in bettering ourselves, we help other people. And leaving things like the YouTube is fantastic. And I think hopefully hundreds of years from now, when we're both dust, ashes and dust, then ultimately other people can benefit from this. I mean, ultimately, you can turn around and say there's no, the stories live on, but that's the thing, it's
and like you said, another thing quite important that resonated with me when you said you were raised by your granddad. So when I was young as well, my dad used to have a shop, like a newsagent in London, and he'd always send us to Leicester all summer. So this is when we had 3-month summer. Me and my sister were raised by my grandpa and granddad, so they lived there with my uncle. So all summer we'd be with them, and there was only 2 places as pre-10-year-old, so any time from 5, 6, 7-year-old. I only felt safe at my own house and my granddad's house. That's it. I was quite an introverted child. And just having that energy of my grandparents as well as my parents, so it felt like I had 2 generations of parents that raised me. I will never, ever, ever say anything in a way which knocks that generation, because I have so much admiration for everything they've done in the small little ways they've done it. And it's not made a huge impact on this thing we call the world, but on my world, it's been the biggest impact, and it's allowed me to be the person I am today, and I will be eternally grateful. I'm doing this little project with my dad where I'm recording his stories right now. So we talk about his time in Africa, his time in India, because I want my great grandkids to know their great granddad. I want them to know in his words what he's about. Not me telling them, because I can tell them about, like my grandma. I can tell my kids about my grandma, but they don't know because they've not. I lived with her. I've been her in effect. She lives within me. I am a part of all the people around me that have raised me. I've been raised by a community. I'm not raised by my parents. I'm raised by everyone, right? And this is what you see in front of you today. And therefore, I want those words to continue in his words. And if I can do that with my knowledge and my skills, I'm going to try,
I think that's you hit the nail on the head. I hear these, I think a lot of what plays into the narrative of this generation that buy into it is this notion of the self-made man. And there's no such thing. There is no such thing as a self-made millionaire. I don't care if Lord Sugar came out with that statement, he's still wrong. Because at the end of the day, people who are millionaires are the result of, yes, their hard work, but the people who raised them, their life experiences, the people that shape their lives in and around what's gone on. So
Mm.
there is no such thing as a self-made millionaire. And even if, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. The thing is, I've gone from earning less than minimum wage. I've had one point I was earning nothing. I'm now earning, fairly well. Who knows? 30 years from now, I could well be a millionaire, but I will never ever claim to be a self-made millionaire. There is no such thing. I am the result of my experiences and the people around me. And, and in that respect, you can never be a self-made millionaire ever, in my humble opinion.
And I
don't know what your thoughts are on that.
And I think something you said earlier about the metric of success. So for me, long time ago, I decided that money was never going to be my metric of success. Money buys me time, and time is my metric of success. When I can shape my time to do the things that I want to do in the way I want to do without anyone saying to me, you have to do this, or you have to go here, or you have to do this. No, because I built my life to use my time in the best way I can give service, whatever I choose that to be, whether that be work, whether that, like I said, doing this, whether that be helping young people, whatever it is. And to me, that's when I feel I'm truly blessed and I'm truly wealthy, because the metric of success for me is time and using my time in this way. Others, like I said, others may have money as a metric, and that's fine. That's cool, whatever, that buys it. But all money does is it buys me time. And that's why it's important. But time, again, is the most important for me.
Yeah, and absolutely.
How, sort of moving forward, Chris, what kind of things do you still think you need to learn, experience, or grow to make the next version of you?
Yeah, so I mentioned that my plan is to franchise my business. The idea being that you can trade under Estuary Cleaning, no matter where you are in the UK, to start with. I'll be honest with you, some of the onboarding processes and some of the legal framework around franchising, I need to brush up on that. Mm-hmm. I need to be a bit more knowledgeable in that respect. I need to have a bit more. I need to, to some degree, my wife says I should be a little bit less self-depreciating because I'm very much. I don't like people who are give it the big I am, and they sell themselves as a big head. And I see the people that show off. I see people for what they are. And I don't ever want to get to that position where I feel that I'm like that. So I try and diffuse that with a bit of self-depreciating humor, because I am conscious I have succeeded, to some degree. But I don't feel that this is the end. Success for me is not a destination. It's fluid,
a journey, right?
Because it's like the next you're a baby and you're learning to walk. All right, so you walk one step, then you walk 2 steps, then you walk 5 steps, then you walk 10, 20, 100. Then you're a runner, and then you do X, Y, and Z. There's always something to aim for. For me, I think, to be honest with you, I need to take myself a bit more seriously sometimes. When it comes to business and stuff like that, I'm very quick to sort of downplay what I do, for fear of falling into the trap of being someone that brags. I do believe I have a lot to be proud of, but I don't think that I should ever let myself get to a position where other people think I'm bragging. And it's not because I'm afraid of what they think. It's because I'm afraid that if I do go that way, it will detract from what it is I'm trying to achieve long term. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that from what you've said, it comes down to self-worth, doesn't it? So when you feel that you have a high level of self-worth, it means that you can go about your work humbly as well. You don't need to have the trinkets of success. You don't need the big car, the big house, things like that. Within you, I am successful, therefore my worth is, again, then you won't need to downplay what you do. It's being appreciative of you, who you are as a person within yourself. It's having a high opinion of yourself. And having that opinion of yourself has to be higher than anyone's opinion of you. And therefore, irrespective of what anyone believes or thinks, you know what the truth is. You know where that energy is coming from. And you know that I am my truth, right? And my truth is this. So however you want to take that, that's none of my business. My business is I know I'm always coming from a good place. and my heart is always clean, and I'm trying to help everyone I can. Now, if you like that or you don't like that, it's none of my business. My business is just continuing on this path, right? And I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I think you just need, like you said, I think for people, again, to appreciate and value you, they have to see you value yourself. And you do that by, like you said, you do it by humor. And I think that's a really good way to do it. But try, like you said, like your partner or your wife has said, try not to knock yourself so much, because sometimes, like you said, it can be taken in a negative way. You can start it in that way, but always bring it back to say, you know what, I am proud. I am proud of what I've done, and I am proud of who I've become as a person. Because like you said, it's not the destination, it's the journey, isn't it? Your actions will always speak louder than your words. And as long as you always realize that, people will always see that. It's your energy you give off, and that energy will always be there even when you're not around, right? It will live through the people around you. And as long as you understand that, you can't go wrong. You really can't,
Yeah.
So as we sort of head to the end of this conversation, Chris, I know I could do this all day, mate. I love
me too, man. Me too.
And we will do again. We will do again. So as we sort of head towards the end of this conversation, a couple more thick questions I'd like to ask you, so people sort of get a little bit more deep understanding of you as a person. So now, we 100 years down the line, you've sort of reached the end of your road. You've created a huge, worldwide franchise. You've employed thousands of people. You've inspired the next generation of business owners and entrepreneurs to live their life and their truth and their journey. And no matter what circumstances your life cards deal with you, you never give up. You just continue, right? So you're now sort of sitting down or you're lying down. You don't have enough energy to speak, but you have a pen and a paper, and the people around you have asked you to write 3 words. Those 3 words have resonated with you your whole life, and hopefully they can take them in and it'll help them in their life. What would those 3 words be for you?
3 C's. Care, courtesy, consideration. Because if you can have all of those, so like basically care about yourself, care about others, care, actually give a shit about, you have a worth and you need to see it. And, the care needs to be as much as caring for yourself as caring for other people. Charity does start at home. You need to look after yourself, in that respect first. Courtesy, always be polite. At first, give people the benefit of the doubt. Ultimately, you'll get more with a kind word than you will shaking a fist. And consideration is just have consideration for other people's opinions, other people's views. Don't be afraid to take on people more clever than you. Do not be threatened by other people's intelligence. Do not be threatened by your lack of knowledge. You can always gain knowledge, but having the consideration that that you're not going to impose your view of just because you have a certain worldview. We might have 2 totally different worldviews, but ultimately we can disagree without coming to blows over it, kind of thing. And consideration for other people's value and how that affects you, for sure. I think that's the way forward. Care, courtesy, consideration.
Perfect. And I can see that coming through in the words you've spoken already during this hour. So Thank you for that. And finally, this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle. And right now you're bigger than the world. So I've sourced a microphone. That microphone is connected to 7.58 billion people on this planet. They're all listening. They can all hear you. There's no language barrier and they're all conscious. So if I gave you this mic for 30 seconds, what would your message be for the world?
Leave the world a better place than you found it. Try and, uplift yourself and uplift others. And ultimately, we're here for a short, for a good time, not a long time. So enjoy the ride, basically. So, yeah.
Perfect. Now, Chris, at this juncture, I'd really like to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Like you said, we come from 2 completely different backgrounds and we come from two different cultures, but I think our views on life and the way we think is so similar. It's almost like quite parallel, right? And I love having conversations with people that, you know, understand some of the languages we speak, because, you know, like you probably know, Chris, these kind of conversations are alien to a lot of people because they don't have other people around them to have these kind of conversations, right? But for me, I've been so blessed that I have so many people around me, and I can continue on this path. It makes me a better person to be a better person for all the people around me, right? So thank you again for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to say just before we go?
Not really, in all honesty. I don't have a speech plan, mate. I just, you know, just like I say, just, you know,
and if you'd be up for it, I won't mind doing sort of some more live conversations, you know, going out live and just having just chewing the fat on life about things. And I think that because I'd always wanted these conversations to be free flow. I never wanted to be a Q&A session. I think it's just worked that way. And I think people, when you hear conversations of other people, they can get so much out of it, even not being a part of it, just from hearing different people's journeys and inspiring themselves and people around them. So thank you again, Chris. Thank you for your time. I'm sure you're going to grow this window cleaning business, and I'll hook up Chris's show notes on Chris's details on the show notes. So if you do want to contact him, even if just for a chat, I'm sure he'll be happy just to have a conversation with you about whatever we've talked about. So thank you again, Chris. Thank you for your time. This was Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. Just leave you with a quick thought. Big energy leads to big thoughts. Big thoughts lead to big ideas. Big ideas lead to big actions. And big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week. See you later. Bye-bye.
When my father committed suicide, I had some choices to make with regards to that fork in the road. Which we all have those times in our lives where they're pivotal. That was one of mine. So I actually say that day was both the best day and the worst day of my life.